So the Sith Order is obviously the opposite of the Jedi Order in many ways. Um, and so I made a video recently about the way of the Jedi. Like, what is the way of the Jedi? How do I see it? Because I mean, there is a lot of conflicting viewpoints. Some say, oh, the way of the Jedi is, well, it used to be this, but now it's flawed, and now it's all one-sided. It's the light side. But it's supposed to be balanced, right? And then there's this other viewpoint that's like, well, no, it's all supposed to be the light side. It's not. You're overcomplicating it way too much. And I do fall into the camp of you're overcomplicating it way too much. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of viewpoints on the way of the Jedi. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. But for now, let's talk about the philosophy of the Sith. So specifically, I want to talk about mostly the Rule of Two era Sith, because at least in canon, we don't really know that much about the Sith before the Rule of Two. In fact, like, I'm not even sure, like, most people do. Like, in Legends, yes, the Rule of Two was started right at the very end between, like Darth Vader started the Rule of Two, and boom, the Sith were gone from the galaxy. But then how does Yoda know to talk about the Rule of Two with Windu? I don't remember where I heard this, but somewhere I heard that George Lucas's original plan, and take this with a massive grain of salt, call it a boulder of salt, but I heard George Lucas's original plan was that the Rule of Two was going to have existed like long before like the Jedi fully took over and thought they destroyed the Sith and stuff. And that would be how they knew of the Sith, which I think is a great idea. You wouldn't necessarily have to have only two Sith, but what you could do is you could have like a master and apprentice of Sith, and then there's like 100 of those, but they're all independent, which would make a lot more sense, because then it's like, well, they're kind of separate, which makes sense based on the philosophy of the Sith, which is very self-serving. And sure, you need the master and the apprentice, so you do have to do some service just so you can learn. But that's about it. And maybe they would form larger groups, but I think that's an interesting idea that I highly doubt they'll explore. I'm very certain, like 95% certain, that whenever Disney gets around to exploring the Old Republic, they're going to give us massive battles with 100 Sith versus 100 Jedi, and who wins, right? That's what everyone wants. Not what I want, but I feel like you could do both. You could do some of that before, some of that in between, some Rule of Two stuff, and Rule of Two stuff near the end. And then eventually Darth Bane goes into hiding with like the final Rule of Two when there's just two, like one master, one apprentice. But that whole rant over, let's talk about the philosophy of the Sith. So the Sith are primarily selfish. That is like the main way I would describe them. The other thing I would mention is their passion. Let's actually go through the Sith code, and let me see if I can remember this. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Yeah, I think that's it. Through power, I gain victory. I believe that's it. And then it's like, through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. It's something like that. Basically, passion leads to power and leads to victory and freedom, basically. That is the ideal of the Sith, according to, I believe that is only in Legends. They might have mentioned that in canon. I'm not sure. But even if it is just in Legends, they're definitely going to be pulling some of that from Legends and bringing it into canon. So let's start with looking at passion and strength and power and all that. How does that connect? Personally, I don't think that passion leads to strength as much as the Sith believe. Like, sure, it can be a good motivator, but at the same time, it can also be a distraction. If you're really passionate about, let's say, like in Anakin's case, he's really passionate about Padme. What if Padme survived and like he wasn't burned and stuff? Well, then his passion could become a weakness if he got distracted. Like, so Palpatine would probably get rid of Padme. Even though his passion is supposedly giving him strength, it's also a weakness. So there is always that to keep in mind. Then through that strength you gain from passion, you gain power. Again, I'm not so sure. If you're motivated by passion, then like your strength might go up in your determination, but your intelligence might drop down a bit because you're not making decisions based on logic, you're making it based on passion. So I feel like the Sith Order is flawed, but I still feel like it is good to take a look at it anyways. So the Sith are passionate. They believe passion leads to power, which I guess kind of makes sense in a way. And then through that power, they can gain strength and freedom and victory, all that kind of stuff. So the Sith are selfish. They want their own victory. They want their own freedom, and they don't care what happens at the cost of others. Let's look at like Sidious, for example. I would say he's probably one of the least passionate Sith, and also one of the most successful. Just something to note there. But I feel like his passion is kind of overshadowed by his cunningness and his selfishness and his greed, right? Like he becomes the emperor of the galaxy through so much cunning. But like who does he hate? He hates the Jedi, I guess, but like that's just cuz they're going to destroy him. So that hate is motivated by his lust for power. Who else does he hate? Probably Mace Windu. I don't know. But again, it's like he's a Jedi. He's going to be against Palpatine no matter what. So Palpatine's passion is almost always determined by like his logic, I guess, which is kind of not too much like a Sith in most cases. But the other thing to keep in mind with Sith is it's not like they're all one order. They're not always in agreement. There are a lot less of them, so there's probably more agreement among the Sith than among the Jedi. But per person, there's probably a lot more disagreement just because of the nature of their order. They're a lot more selfish. They're a lot more individualistic. They're a lot more passionate and chaotic. So naturally, they're going to be much more different. Point in case, like, let's look at this. Count Dooku. Compare that to Palpatine. Compare that to, like, Vader. They're all very, very different. Whereas compare Obi-Wan to Yoda to Mace Windu. Sure, there's differences, but they're a lot more similar. So not only are the Sith, I guess, selfish and passionate, but they're also very unique. They don't focus on order as much as they focus on chaos. They're very free thinking. I would guess in most cases. And those are some good things, some bad things. But yeah, moving on, let's talk about Count Dooku, right? He's a Sith. But like honestly, Count Dooku is kind of a strange Sith. Like he doesn't seem that angry all the time. He doesn't have this crazy backstory with like dead parents and stuff. I mean, he kind of does, but like he grew up as a Jedi, so like dead parents is It's, like don't get me wrong. There has been hardship in his life. He's had challenges, but it's not like Anakin, where he lost everything, was burned, and all that stuff. It's not like Maul, where he was chopped in half, or Maul, who was trained from the age of a child to be a Sith. Count Dooku is kind of just this former Jedi turned leader of the Separatists who serves Palpatine and occasionally gets Sith eyes as he mercilessly kills people. I think one of the reasons Count Dooku is a Sith, like that is more, or one of his philosophies that is more in line with the Sith, is his mercilessness. He does not care about others like one bit. I mean, maybe a little bit. Maybe certain people. Like maybe Ventress. But even Ventress, he's like, yeah, well, Sidious is gonna hurt me if I don't get rid of you, so goodbye, and you're dead. Like, and he said he like contacted her with a completely straight face. I do feel like he cared a bit, but I mean, like it's his own good. He's not gonna risk his own good for her good. And so mercilessness, I think, is one of the things that is in line with the Sith for him. Which mercilessness ultimately stems from selflessness, in most cases, or selfishness, I should say. So yeah, and then there's also in the, what is it called? The book with Asajj and Quinlan Voss. Like, blanking on the name. Why am I blanking on the name of this book? It's a really good book. You should definitely read it. Dark Disciple. That's what it's called. At the very beginning of that book, he's like responsible for the slaughter of like this entire like ship of people. Like I believe it's almost like extinction. And it's been a while since I read the book, or rather listened to it because I do audiobooks. But like that is merciless. Like he mercilessly destroyed them. Then of course there's the whole war. I mean, he's profiting off of a war. He's very merciless. I feel like I've stressed that point enough. But he's not he's like Palpatine in that he's not overly passionate. He's not controlled by his passions as much. But let's remedy talking about that by talking about Vader and Maul. Let's do Vader first. Let's do Maul first. So Maul was like, I don't know if it's canon, but at least in Legends, he was basically became a Sith like at the same time as Jedi. So super young. Like he barely has memories of his previous life. So like he's always grown up being taught to hate, taught to like feed on his anger. And you see that in his fight with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And even before that, you see in comics and all that kind of stuff. But specifically in the movies, you see that a lot with his expression and his fighting style. But one of the big keys of this is his like when the laser door is closed, and they're all like just waiting there, and you see Obi-Wan standing at the far end, and he's kind of like bouncing up and down, ready to go, ready to rush in and like basically fight Maul. Then you've got Qui-Gon Jinn kneeling down, setting his lightsaber down, closed eyes, he's meditating. And then you have Darth Maul, and he's like pacing back and forth. He's glaring at Qui-Gon. He's like a caged animal. Like, he is so full of just pure hatred. And it's nothing against specifically Qui-Gon. Like, it is something against the Jedi. He does, there's a comic where he gets like a vision of like Jedi killing a bunch of Sith or something. And he basically just gets filled with this hatred for Jedi. So he does have a hatred for Jedi. But this hatred isn't like personal like that. He's like fostering in himself artificially in addition to his hatred for Jedi, so that he can fuel himself with just so much passion to kill Qui-Gon Jinn. So yeah, and then that's just the beginning though, because after that he gets cut in half by Obi-Wan. He survives for like 10 years off of his hatred. Like he builds himself like spidery legs. He survived. Like what he did is crazy. And honestly, it doesn't really make much sense. But he had such good character development. I don't care. But yeah, after that, he was totally motivated by hatred. And unlike his hatred for the entire Jedi Order that he had before, now it's focused on one single person. So it becomes even more personal. And that's his hatred for Obi-Wan, of course. So yeah, that Maul, I love talking about Maul because he's got such an interesting, I guess, worldview, where like the only important thing is revenge, and he's gonna get revenge on Obi-Wan because Obi-Wan cut him in half, and then later he's gonna get revenge on Palpatine because Palpatine discarded him, like he didn't even need him anymore because really he didn't. He met Anakin, and it's like, Maul was pretty good, but this Anakin guy, I don't know. I like this guy. But yeah, anyways, and Maul is such an interesting character to look at. Always focused on getting revenge. He learned a lot from his master, as well, which I love to see, like in the Mandalore arc with him manipulating everyone. That was cool. He was basically like a mini Sidious in the underworld. And then, of course, in Rebels, he manipulates Ezra. That was cool to see. Just, man, I love talking about Maul. Leave your favorite Maul scene in the chat or in the comments. Like, what's your favorite scene with Darth Maul? And I probably shouldn't have asked that question because this is going to take me a second to come up with mine. Just off the top of the head, I'm going to go with when he kills Satine in front of Obi-Wan and just carries off to prison to suffer that scene was very powerful. I loved that. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I might change in a couple hours or something. I'm not too set on that scene in particular, but yeah, leave your favorite scene in the chat or in the comments. What's your favorite Maul scene? So yeah, let's move on to Darth Vader and talk about like his, I guess, idea of the Sith. And originally, the reason he joined the Sith is to save Padme, which really Anakin is the perfect person to study when talking about, um, like how I see the Sith at least. He's kind of the model I use to see the differences between the Sith and the Jedi. Because before, I mean, let's be honest, he wasn't a super attachmentless Jedi. Like he wasn't even close to that ideal. Um, but I mean, he was compassionate. He wasn't overly controlled by his attachments. Like sure, he sometimes gave up missions for Obi-Wan or Ahsoka, or even Padme, but like he didn't go way over the line like he did in Revenge of the Sith. Um, yeah, he was compassionate. He was very noble. He was very heroic, and he was pretty selfless as well. Like he doesn't seek like glory for himself very much. He doesn't seek wealth. He doesn't seek I don't know, worldly possessions or anything like that. He wants what's best for others, and most important to him, which is gonna lead me to my next point, is not what's most important for him, but what's most important for the people he loves, which in Revenge of the Sith proves to be just as big of a mistake. Like, which I'll be honest, in most cases, it's probably a lot worse to be selfish than to be like want what's best for your loved ones. So don't hear me wrong here. But yeah, basically he gives up everything for Padme. He's completely blinded by his attachment to her, so much that he like kills younglings, and that's what loses her. Um, yeah, and like she shows up on Mustafar, and she's like, "Well, you've changed. You're no longer like you did this all for me to save me, but in doing so, you killed yourself and replaced yourself with this Darth Vader person." And that's like the perfect tragedy, and kind of shows the futility of becoming a Sith, or I guess acting like a Sith. Um, at least in the sense of not selfishness, because obviously Palpatine got what he wanted for several years. Um, Still not a good lifestyle. Let me be clear. You probably shouldn't start a war to gain political power, um, especially not a war as bad as the Clone Wars. Um, but like Palpatine got what he wanted. Anakin did not get what he wanted. Um, so yeah, like attachments are forbidden by the Jedi for a reason, because they can lead to the dark side, and they do lead to at least some sort of selfishness. It's not selfishness for yourself, but it's selfishly wanting what's best for the people you know rather than that random person. Like there's this age-old question like, would you rather kill like 10 random people that you don't know, or would you rather kill your parents? And it's like, well, that's a grim question, but like when you get down to it, what is technically the better option? And yet pretty much all of us would choose our parents, like, or to save our parents, I should say. Just because we have this attachment to them, even though technically it's like a 10-2. So, yeah, I don't know. But, yeah. So, I guess the philosophy of the Sith is it comes down to not attachments. It comes down to, like, passion and greed. Sith always do what's best. I shouldn't say always, especially not when talking about Sith. Sith, the ideal Sith, or I should say the Sith that perfectly follows the philosophy, always does what's best in their own self-interest, and they don't care at all about other people outside of what those other people can do for the Sith. And in addition, they are fueled by their passion a lot, and usually they're pretty cunning. They can control their passion, like Count Dooku or Sidious. Even Vader had a pretty firm grasp on his passion, and so he was pretty controlled as well. And honestly, even Maul at times. He was constantly fueled by his just desire to destroy Obi-Wan, but he didn't let that like blind him. He didn't like chase down Obi-Wan like just by himself. At least at first he did, of course, but after a while he realized that was not the best option, and so he lured him out with the Crisis on Mandalore, and then killed Satine in front of his eyes and made him suffer like Maul had suffered. And that was a pretty clever plan. But yeah, so Sith kind of usually control their passions, but at the same time, their passions are what makes them choose their core decisions. For example, Palpatine, I guess, what he most wanted was to rule the galaxy, to get rid of the Jedi. So that's what he did. Maul was just filled with vengeance towards Obi-Wan and later to Sidious. So he did everything in his power to destroy those two. And failed at both. But, good try, Maul. You chose some pretty big fish to catch. Then there's Vader, who is fueled by, I guess, his grief at losing Padme, his anger at the Jedi for taking Padme. He's fueled by emotion too. And Count Dooku, honestly, I'm not sure. Count Dooku, and I'll probably talk more about this. Count Dooku is a very different Sith. Oh, I also want to talk about Ventress and her whole, because technically she's not a Sith. Sure, she's a Sith apprentice, whatever. But at the same time, I think she does use the dark side, and therefore is at least similar to the philosophy of the Sith. So actually, let me do a quick recap for those of you who don't know Ventress's whole backstory. Let me try to remember this. So, she was a Night Sister, and she got traded to some, basically she got traded into slavery on Rat Attack or something. I think it's Rat Attack. And she had to do, but eventually she gets freed by this Jedi. However, this Jedi is stranded on the planet. No contact with the Jedi, no aid from the Jedi, just completely stranded on the planet. And so this Jedi realizes that she has the Force and trains her. And she kind of starts, at some point, the Jedi Master gets, killed by a bunch of thugs. And Ventress basically turns to the dark side, kills all of the criminals, and takes over, I believe she takes over a, gladiator ring type thing. And is, the leader of that. So, then she kind of turns to the dark side, because obviously grief at losing your master, basically your father, is pretty powerful. So she turns to the dark side, and she kind of starts to blame the Jedi for not helping to rescue her master. And then Count Dooku shows up and basically recruits her to the dark side to join him as Separatist, and she just follows along with that, and becomes his assassin for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years into the war. Then she's betrayed by Dooku, and instead of being filled with this hatred for the Jedi, she's filled with this hatred for Count Dooku, who betrayed her. Because honestly, her hatred of the Jedi was kind of indirect. It's well, you should have done this thing and you didn't. Whereas Count Dooku is well, you shouldn't have done this thing and you did do it. So it's like a passive, I guess, insult versus a direct insult. Count Dooku literally tried to do something, whereas the Jedi just didn't do something. I don't know. Tell me if that doesn't make any sense in the chat. Yeah, so then for the next, I guess, she does take a break. For the next little bit, she basically does everything in her power to get revenge on Count Dooku, which eventually ends up with her losing all of her Night Sisters to Count Dooku killing them. So she's even more upset than before. And even more, grief-stricken than before as well. So she kind of just gives up on everything and becomes a bounty hunter. And it's at this point where I think she deviates a lot from the Sith philosophy. A Sith, like Maul would double down and seek even more vengeance rather than just giving up and deciding, you know what, I'm just going to become a bounty hunter because I don't even know what to do. This guy he has just so much armies and all this kind of stuff at his disposal. So I can't even take him on. So why try? And I feel like if she had been like fully in line with this the philosophy, she wouldn't have given up there. She would have just kept fighting and probably died even sooner. But for whatever reason, she becomes a bounty hunter for a while, and then eventually meets up with Quinlan Voss, and then she teaches him the dark side a bit, and kind of tries to get vengeance on Dooku again, which doesn't work out so well when she gets killed there. And if you don't know, this is from the book Dark Disciple. You should definitely read it. I should clarify, not all of this is from the book Dark Disciple. A lot of it is. So you should definitely read that book. It's a great book. I don't know. Just good book. Definitely read it. Get it on Audible, Libby, something like that. Listen to it. Get it from the library. And have fun. Enjoy Star Wars. It's a fun series. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to mention about the Sith philosophy. I can't think of anything else. I feel like there was something I wanted to say. But I can't think of it right now. So maybe I will leave a comment and pin it or something. I doubt it though. So leave your thoughts about that in the chat or leave it in the comments. And the next segment is going to be about Sith eyes. So if you're interested in the Sith philosophy, you might want to check that out as well. There should be a clicky thing in the box that you click on and it takes you to the next video. End of screen. That's what it's called. There should be one of those for those of you watching the video not live.